are doing nothing about it, or like you can say the academia is entirely useless, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't get us anywhere, because each of them needs the other, which I guess is what I mean by something like an ecosystem, that one needs to build in the country an open source ecosystem, assuming the components are in place, which, for example, in a country like India, I think the components are in place. The government has some open mind on it. The academia is fairly aware of it, and so on and so forth. But still, as a whole, I don't think we deliver much in open source space. The reason being, we are not connected. That connection has not been established, and I think the connection is very important to establish these linkages, right? And these linkages are, I think, what makes an ecosystem. And currently, that's what not there, I think. At least in my country, the units are there, fairly in place, you know. For example, here, from what I heard the previous speaker saying, if there is a keen desire that we should promote open source in the region, I think we should keep in mind that it's not just one government alone that can do that. It requires these players doing their bit and doing it together. Why I'm highlighting the point is people tend to be bitching about this. For example, typically a community of academicians will gather together and say our industry is entirely useless as far as FOSS is concerned. Not only useless, they are hostile, they are ignorant. We really end up abusing the industry, right? And when the industry meets, of course, they will say there are such excellent open source solutions, but why don't these academia do something about it? Why don't they train people? And so on. So each keep abusing the other in separate meetings. So what probably would need is that all the meetings should have all the four players so that they can abuse face to face and maybe produce something in the process. I'm entirely convinced that same thing about community. Open source community are extremely vocal in India, and they collect huge crowds, but most of the time they end up abusing the government, saying the government is absolutely sold out to multinationals, this, that, and so on and so forth, and they don't want to do anything. So next time the government says, I don't want to have anything to do with open source community, they keep abusing us, and so on and so forth. So the point is that in India we have reached a point where unless this is closed, we probably can't move forward. So how does one do that? That's my point, that each player, different groups, right, should contribute to the building up of the ecosystem as such. The connections have to be established. FOSS events, etc., should make conscious effort to bring four players. For example, I don't know, in this group, in this meeting here, if we were to look at what's the breakup of those four players, I really don't know how many there would be, but I do hope that meetings such as these would have players from all these four spaces. Right. It's something we are trying to do. It's difficult to do, but we're just trying to make a beginning. Of course, in our country, the problem government is at very many layers. There's a central government, and there's a state or provincial government, and below that there are district administration. So the question is that at what level is it easier to build this ecosystem, right? That, of course, depends on the context. In my country, I believe that the state level, the provincial level, because that's a language. Each state has a language, right? So there's a shared culture and so on. If we were to try to build a FOSS ecosystem at the state level, that may be easier than at the national level. Actually, in India, doing anything at the national level is nearly impossible because it's too huge, for too much noise all over the place, right? So one of the things that we try to do is try and create this while we also build the individual pieces. Right, so we have a website there. And this is the website of the overall organization, the National NRCFOSS organization. This is our website through which we do the education, human resource development part does, and that is my email address. So thank you for your time and attention.